Well, hi there, everybody. Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is a podcast that we, most of the time, look at the sermon and do a deep dive on the sermon from the previous week. But sometimes we have specials, and this week is a special because we have Reverend Brian Smith, who is my colleague and friend and is the pastor right down the road here at Waleska United Methodist. So, welcome, Brian.
Thanks. It's so good to be here, Dave.
Yeah, so glad. So we're going to get to know Brian today and talk shop a little bit. So let's go. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So Brian, how's it going? I saw on Facebook you have a kid that was having a birthday party. I couldn't quite understand what was going on, but there were pictures of you and your kid. So what was going on? I know it's not kindergarten graduation. He's not near old enough, but what was that about?
No, we've got a little 3-year-old, and we actually just got back from vacation, and so we were gone for a week, and so he was running around the beach and going down slides and crying at the same time and all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, it was fun.
Yeah, we had a great time.
You look a little tan.
I guess. Yeah, as tan as a redhead can get, right?
That's all right. And so I've enjoyed getting to know Brian, getting to know you during the time that we've been sharing here in Cherokee County the last, 3 or 4 years here. And so how is it going over there in Waleska, though?
Yeah, things are great. So I serve as the pastor of Waleska United Methodist Church. We're on the campus of Reinhardt University. Mm-hmm. And we have a wonderful partnership with the university, and we also serve the local community. Mm-hmm. We are a growing United Methodist congregation. Each week we seem to be having more visitors, and we're welcoming new folks. We recently had to buy more chairs to bring them in the sanctuary, and so we're having fun. We're growing. Yeah. We're welcoming new folks. This past Sunday we had nine new members join the church, and so things are really good. And we seek to really faithfully serve God in Waleska and Cherokee County, and at the same time help people discover God's grace.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
That's good, man. You know your church's vision statement and
yeah.
Very, very nicely done and well said, Ryan. That's great. Yeah, that's really awesome. And so, what are your responsibilities, or how do you interact as a pastor there on the Reinhardt campus?
Sure. Yeah. So we are a church that serves both the community and the university community.
Yeah.
So we're primarily a community church, meaning folks who just live in the area come to our church.
Yeah.
And then we've got students and faculty and staff that worship there as well. I serve also part-time as part of what I do as one of the campus chaplains for Reinhardt University. Mm-hmm. Since I'm a United Methodist pastor and it's a United Methodist affiliated university, mm-hmm. I help with some of the large events. Like I spoke at graduation just a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I also help with pastoral care when there's emergencies and different crises within the university community.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, one of the things that we've done, and I've had several pastor colleagues that have done this with us over the last however long we've been doing this. And one thing is to kind of hear their story. I think I've actually maybe have heard your call story before, but just share where you're from and what was your journey like to become a United Methodist pastor? Where did you grow up? When did you first start sensing that this is what God was calling you to and all of that?
Yeah, and it's a really great and a lovely story that begins even before I was born. And Methodists would say that's prevenient grace.
Yeah.
But really, this is a really neat part of our family story. So my mother's side of the family were living in Germany after the war, and there was a a Methodist church in Atlanta, St. Mark Methodist, that started to help people immigrate to the United States after the war, and my family was one of them. So when my mother was about a year old and my grandparents were young, that church brought my family over. They set them up in the church parsonage that was empty. They showed up. The refrigerator was full of food. They had clothes for my whole family and little dresses for my mother. And they got my grandfather a job at J.M. Tolt, the metal company in Atlanta. And as a result, of course, they loved and became lifelong members of St. Mark. And so that church was very much a part of my family's story in helping them come to the United States States. And then also, as a result, the United Methodist Church is a long part of our family's story as well. And so I grew up in a local church. I grew up at Berkmar United Methodist Church over in Gwinnett County. And I've always loved the church and been a part of it, but I did not feel called at all to be a pastor, right? Like I just thought I'll be a part of the church, and I love being a part of the church. And I went off to college at Birmingham Southern College. And
Another United Methodist school.
Another United Methodist school.
Yeah.
And I was taking a class on the Gospel of John taught by a retired United Methodist bishop, even though they don't ever retire, but he was a retired United Methodist bishop, Bishop Bob Morgan, and it was on the Gospel of John. And I fell in love with the study and the reading of Scripture and the deep dive into Scripture.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I'll take a couple more classes on this. I really enjoy this. And through Bishop Morgan and through others and through a local church in Birmingham, I began to sense that God might be calling me to do something that resembled ministry. And I didn't know what that looked like, but I decided to kind of follow that nudge and follow that leading. And the story I love to tell is one night I was over at Bishop Morgan's house, and his wife, Martha, he called her Martha, like a good Southern man did. And she made a better pot roast than my mother did. I don't ever tell her that, but she did. And we were eating dinner and we were finishing up, and I looked over across the table at Bishop and Martha, and I said, I think I'm called to ministry and I'm thinking about going to seminary.
Yeah.
And he was a big guy, and he kind of leaned across the table and he said, I've been waiting for you to tell me that.
Yeah.
And so to me, that was the Holy Spirit speaking through him and also acknowledging what I had already been sensing.
Yeah.
And then so the rest of the story kind of fell into place. I went to seminary and I've gone through the long process, and now I've been a United Methodist pastor for a little over 10 years now.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. Yeah, this is a beautiful story. And Bishop Morgan is a legend.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, his life has impacted and affected a lot of folks. And so I thank you for sharing that. And so that does bring up a nice little thing we can talk about. And that is, both of us serve as on our board in our district for the board of ministry. And you also serve additionally on the conference board of ministry.
Right.
And so let's talk a little bit about how a person becomes credentialed as a United Methodist pastor. Because, we have a lot of different faith traditions, and different churches do it different way. I have this assumption that, most of our church members probably know that we went through some sort of credentialing process. I think a lot of people think that's just going to seminary, and then you come out on the other end and you're, a pastor, and you get a church. But that's not the case. There's another thing in this. That's where we serve in the role of how we credential people and put them through that. I remember Jamie Jenkins, I think he said, I think part of our board's job is he used the words, is it grandma, grits, or God? And so
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, it's just like somebody would want to become a pastor because their grandmother, if always wanted their child to grow up and become a preacher, or maybe you ate something and had a weird dream, or was it God calling? And so how do you discern that it's God's voice calling you to do that? And so God calls, but the church is really the people that really confirm that calling. And so talk a little bit about what we do, why we do it, and maybe there's different avenues. You don't necessarily have to go to seminary to become a pastor, but there's different avenues. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah. It's a long process, right? Yeah. And that's not to scare anyone away. It's just to ensure that people really are, as you've kind of talked about with this grits and God and grandma reference that I've just learned about now, but I might be stealing. We want to make sure that people are really called by God to serve the church. And the first thing that we look for is that you are being called, that it is something that you sense yourself, and something that your local pastor and your local church see and affirm in you as well. So it's something that you sense and that others sense in you as well. And for folks who are going through the process, the first part and the first step is just to talk to your local pastor, to say, hey, I want to grab coffee sometime, and I think I might be called to ministry.
Right.
Or I'm just getting weird nudges from God that I might be called to ministry, and I don't know what that looks like. And your pastor is going to help walk you through that.
Right.
Talk about what these different avenues look like. To me, that's such an important first step.
Right, yeah. Because it is the local church that really is where the process begins, and then, eventually they will meet with their SBR, and then actually there's a vote to the church. Says, do they see the gifts and graces in that person? And so, that's usually a very affirming thing for a person to that. Hopefully, they got the support of their local congregation.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And then what's next?
And then you're assigned a mentor.
Yeah.
And your mentor works through a book with you about being called to the ministry, and you'll think through and pray through that. And usually, that's at least a couple of months, if not more.
Yeah.
And then you'll also go before what Dave and I serve on, the District Committee on Ordained Ministry, to be certified as a candidate, as someone who potentially could go through this process. And that's when we ask you a little bit about your calling and about your story and about some of the things that you believe. And we have a conversation with that. And it's really just to affirm and hear how God is calling you to ministry.
Yeah, exactly.
And then after you become a candidate, most folks then begin seminary.
But there are other avenues. So let's talk about this. I mean, both of you and I have been to seminary, but in the United Methodist Church, there are credentials that are given to local pastors, people who are serving as deacons, and people who are serving as elders. And so each one of those is a little bit different. So let's talk about a local pastor for a second. So what would that look like? Up to this point, everything is identical, right? But somebody, just because of what their age and stage may be in life, or their life circumstance, be called to being a local pastor. So what does that look like?
Yeah, a local pastor is going to serve one of our local congregations, usually a smaller congregation, and oftentimes it's part-time, but not always. We do have full-time local licensed pastors as well. And so that's when you are licensed to serve a local congregation as a pastor. And you administer the sacraments there, and you preach and teach, and seminary is not required. We do have continuing education that goes through that process and helps to support
a course of study, and it's not just a one Saturday workshop. It's kind of a continuous with lots of folks that teach teach that local pastor stuff. Are seminary professors, or people that have great knowledge in a variety of things, from preaching to church polity to all of that. So that's an important distinction as well.
And our local pastors, local licensed pastors, are just incredible. They give me so much hope and inspiration, and they're so vital to serving our denomination and our conference too, right? Without them, so many of our churches just wouldn't have clergy. They're just incredible.
And so we also have a person who might be on a deacon track, or someone who might be in an elder track. And those lines have gotten a little bit more blurred over the years. But one of the big distinctions is that elders itinerate, deacons do not typically itinerate.
Remind me what itinerant means.
Itinerant?
Yeah, remind me about that.
Well, you've been at your church for 7 years, so maybe you've forgotten. But yeah, so we are, the local church does not hire us. Some people may come from a denominational background where, the church would have a search committee, and then they would have interview the pastor and that sort of thing, and call that pastor to their church. The United Methodist Church, we are appointed to a local church. And so, we do move around, maybe not as much as maybe in the old times when, pastors were moving every 3 or 4 years. I think Wesley left his pastors there for like a year or two. I mean, he was always moving his pastors back when he started. Yeah.
Just don't even unpack then.
Yeah, hardly. But that's important to unpack. But we serve. So let me ask you, throw that back on you. Why is important? Why is itineracy important? Why, what I just described, why is that important, and how does that benefit the local church?
Yeah.
For us to be appointed, not sent, called by the local church, and the fact that we do itinerate.
Yeah, first it celebrates our connectional nature, right? That we are a church that is united and we're connected, and our clergy are a part of a greater mission and a purpose. And it also is a beautiful system. It's challenging some days, but it's a beautiful system in that, like, right, if a church needs a pastor, our bishop can deploy folks, and our churches can have their pulpits filled quickly, and so it's a both connectional and a very practical system. You're not waiting for a year or two as your search committee is trying to find somebody either.
Yeah, well, and I think it also, a really important aspect of it is that it allows us to preach and pastor in the way that we felt now, and not just to please the congregation is there.
Yeah.
Because if you're in a called situation and the preacher preaches something the congregation doesn't like, they could vote him out that night. But yet, so we have to live into that, and so, and also I think we've all have different gifts. Not every preacher has, great administrative skills, but they may be real creative and be able to start some new ministries. And the different, and as I have moved around over the years, I found that sometimes I land in a place that obviously the Holy Spirit was involved, because I felt like my gifts are needed right now in this church. And so, and I think that the cabinet, when they sit down and they think about what does that church need right now? What kind of pastor are they looking for that's going to help them move and fulfill the mission of the United Methodist Church to make disciples of Jesus Christ? So, yeah. And so we have local pastors, going back, we're kind of jumping around here, but the local pastors go to a licensing school, and then they take the course of study, and then deacons and elders that requires an MDiv, which they have to complete before that. But all through that time, they're meeting with the district board to make sure that they're ready to go before the full board. And so, since I don't serve on the full board, maybe you can say what do y'all do as you have candidates that come and examine and recommend for ordination or for.
Sure. So folks come before us at least twice, and the first time they come before us is for what we call provisional, being a provisional elder or deacon within the church. And we interview them on their theology and doctrine, called and disciplined life, their leadership, and also some of their gifts for ministry. And so we have a conversation, we watch a sermon, we read Bible studies, we read prayers. They're submitting, at least 100 pages or more of written work. And we interview them and have a conversation with them, and if we believe that they're qualified and ready to be able to do this, then they become a provisional member, and they're appointed to a local church, and then they'll serve for at least 3 years as a provisional member, and then after 3 years, they'll come back. And they'll interview with us again, and we make sure that they're fit and ready, and that they have fruit, and that they have displayed the fruit of their ministry and their work as well over those 3 years. And again, we'll watch sermons, we'll read their Bible studies, we'll read recommendations from their senior pastor or from their district superintendent, and we make sure that they have fruit and evidence that God is working with them and calling them.
During that 3-year period, they are also assigned a mentor or a group that they work with. At least once a month, maybe they meet. I'm trying to remember.
Once a month. It's a resident and ministry group, and they support one another, and they practice ministry in front of one another, and they pray for one another, and it's a really beautiful process. And when you finish that RIM group, we call it RIM group. When you finish RIM group after 3 years, a lot of the groups still kind of meet occasionally.
Yeah, friendships are made there.
And you also kind of like you miss it too. You miss getting together with those folks monthly. So.
Yeah. So anyway, well, that's a lot of inside inside baseball, I guess, talk. Hopefully this has been interesting to people. I guess if there's nothing else you take away from this is that ideally we hope that our United Methodist pastors have been well credentialed, well schooled, and examined as they are appointed to local churches to serve.
Yeah. one of my seminary professors, and he's now the dean of Duke Divinity School. He had something about being an ordained elder. He said something about being an ordained elder that I love. This is Eduardo Colon Emerick, the dean of Duke Divinity School. He said that one of the elder's roles is to help people hear the harmony of God's grace in the midst of the cacophony of the other voices in this world. And I love that, because I love the idea that as pastors, we're helping people to hear the beauty of grace in the midst of all the other crazy things that are going on. And I think that's so true. Like, to think that that's what we're called to do, and we get to do every day.
What a beautiful image.
Like, I'm so thankful that God has called me to this life, and that's part of what I get called to do.
Yeah. Well, I do thank you, Brian, for coming over and chatting with us, and appreciate your friendship and your ministry over there. And we do try to get together from time to time.
Yeah.
Since we're here locally, but I don't see you enough. So, what you got planned for this summer? Yeah, I mean, you just finished vacation, so is that it for the summer? You got other trips planned, or?
We don't have any other trips planned, so we did a week-long trip, and so, we're just going to hang out. We go to the pool, the YMCA in Canton all the time. We're there playing around, having a good time, and so it's just going to be a casual summer, busy at church, but it'll be good. Yeah,
I don't know if we're doing a official vacation this summer either. I just had, as you know, my first grandchild, and so I think we'll probably be staying close, maybe some long weekends or that sort of thing. So maybe we can get together this summer and go to a ball game or something. So
let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Thanks for having me on the deep dive.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. We'll do it again.
Great.
All right. Well, God bless everybody, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.